Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a disturbing nature.
And we're not going to hold back on the graphic details and disturbing content.
So we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 99. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
99. How awesome is that?
That's a lot.
Yeah, it really is. And I went back because I was looking at it because I was editing the episode for our Fumbles 3. And Joyous, you had made the comment that it had been a while since we did the last one. We did that one back in March.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's October now. So like I didn't realize that much time had gone by.
Time is flying.
Really is. I wanted to do like a Fumbles every 3 months or so and didn't realize that we let so much time pass. So we got to stay on top of me so not fuck that up again.
Yeah, why don't you please not fuck that up again?
Those are such great cases.
I just realized we can make a nice little joke out of this 99 episode.
Uh-oh.
So instead of 99 bottles of beer on the wall, it's 99 cases on the wall.
Okay, all right, that's funny.
Because you have your map and that's on the wall. And
ooh, good point.
That's true.
Yes.
99 cases on the wall.
Yes.
99 cases of murder on the wall.
Yes.
There it is.
There it is. So maybe we'll have to take a picture of the maps and post that again because we haven't done that in a very long time.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, so we'll do that when we like the same day I post for this episode. We'll post a new photo, an updated photo of our map with all the pins. Because holy crap, you're right, it's full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do find it amusing how there's very obviously big spaces where we've never done a case. Like I'm looking up right now in Wyoming, Nebraska, the two Dakotas. You know, like there's this big space. So I'm like, we have to find.
I guess it's hard to mass murder when people are so sparsely populated.
Well, we don't have to do mass murders. We just need a murder.
Just need some special murders.
Yeah, exactly. Something that's not your typical murder. Exactly. But we'll figure it out. I'm determined that I'm going to hit every 50 state as well as, if not, hopefully every country on the planet. But, you know, I don't want to be too ambitious on that one.
Right. I don't know how much records we're going to find of North Korean murders.
That's true. That I didn't even think of that. But we'll see what we can find. We could probably just do a history of North Korea. Not that we would, but all right. With that said, let's jump on into this case. In the 19th century, Kansas was a bloody place, especially before the Civil War, as free soilers and slavery advocates duked it out for the control of the new territory. Now, free soilers are people that are out there to claim land for free, basically. They're trying to stake their claims. So once Kansas declared itself with the Union and the Civil War began, bloody battles there just continued. When the war was over, pioneers began to head westward along many trails through Kansas, and murder and mayhem persisted as hardened men from the battlefields, who had grown used to violence, continued their violent ways along the overland trails in many of those like cow towns.
I'm not going to lie, you're kind of making me want to play Oregon Trail.
I was thinking about that. I was like, where was the Oregon Trail? Did it go through this area? I thought that, but I didn't look it up.
I'm not sure. I think it started in Missouri, so it would make sense that it did go through that. But I could be really wrong.
Well, looking at the map in front of me, the Missouri is going to have to go through Kansas unless they went so far north it went through Nebraska.
Right, and that'd be cold. Oh, no, it did. It did go through Nebraska. Oh, just a touch of Kansas. Just a touch of northeast Kansas.
Okay, so then it didn't go through this area, but it still went through Kansas. So that's cool.
All right, well, there's our fun fact for the day.
So if they weren't accosted by road agents, travelers also had to be concerned about attacks from Native American tribes. Southeast Kansas in particular was known to be a rough area. So just after the Civil War ended, the U.S. government moved the Osage Indians from Labette County in southeast Kansas to the new Indian Territory that would later become known as the state of Oklahoma. Now, I am going to use interchangeably the term Indian and Native American, only because in the terms of their using where I just used them now, it was like official titles back in the day. So that's why I'm using that particular word.
Right, yeah, like they're gonna all the like territories are gonna be called that because that's what they were calling it.
Exactly. But if it's just a casual, like they just, then I would obviously say Native American. So in 1870, 5 families of spiritualists settled into western Labette County. About
Bad vibes. Spiritualists? Bad vibes.
Yeah, spiritualist.
Sounds like a cult.
Very good, because you're like, it's funny, you guys haven't done this in so long, but yes, it's almost like you can see my notes.
It's because I have trigger words. You say spiritualist, I'm like, all right.
Exactly. Well, basically they were a cult-like group, these families, and they chose several available claims and began to make them their homes in an area where Cherry Vale would soon be plotted a year later. So it's just even before it was a town.
Gotcha.
Now, one of these
starting a cult town.
Yeah, basically.
Me and the homies when we start a cult.
Right. But it's funny because there's a part of me that wants to think of it more like the Amish. You know how like there's a whole swath of Pennsylvania where you find a lot of Amish and Mennonites.
Right, that's true.
But at the same time, once we talk about this particular family, you're going to understand why it maybe not so much.
Interesting.
So with that said, this family were called the Benders. And it was comprised of
That's a great name.
Yes, it is. This was comprised of John Bender Sr., his wife Elmira, their son John Jr., and their daughter Kate. So as travelers moved their way across the Kansas landscape, tired and road-weary, they were encouraged when they saw a sign on a building that read, "Groceries." This was the Benders' home. Now, obviously, the idea of like having traveled there and you see groceries, that's a sight for sore eyes. So many of them would stop for a meal. And when they entered their home, they were seated at a table with their backs to a large canvas that separated the inn from the living quarters. Then their beautiful daughter, Kate, would sit down and begin to charm them with her social skills, flirting, and revealing that she had psychic gifts.
Oh.
As their men gave their attention to Kate, Pa and or John were hiding behind the canvas, and they would strike the unsuspecting traveler in the head with a hammer.
Oh. God.
Ma Bender and Kate would then search the body for money and push him or her through a trap door into a hole below the cabin, where Kate would then slit their throat.
Oh, Sweeney Todd vibes.
You beat me to it. I was just about to say.
I'm always going to beat you to the Sweeney Todd reference.
So the body would later be buried in a garden behind the house at night. So this is the case of a family known as the Bloody Benders, and they are
a great name.
And they are Kansas's most famous murderous family.
Damn, I feel like is there a movie based off of this?
Yes, and I was going to mention that later on, but we can do it now. There is a movie based on them. I think it's called The Benders.
Oh, I was like, dang. Like, I feel like the imagery of this is very clear to me, and I feel like I must have at least seen a trailer.
That's funny. I'm wondering now if maybe you had watched the whole thing. So this would be interesting. This might be a first where you actually know the whole case.
Wow, that would be. I do watch a lot of horror movies, so.
Okay, so when the Benders first settled in Kansas, John Bender Sr. chose a 160-acre section of the western slopes that continued to bear that name today. The property was located directly on the Osage Mission Independence Trail that went from the town of Independence to Fort Scott. Now his son, John Jr., chose a narrow piece of land just north of that land, but he never lived on that claim or made any improvements to it. He literally just kept it a piece of bare land. Family. Okay. I guess maybe they didn't he just didn't have time,
Right. If they're just giving out land for free, then you're not that worried about you're developing it.
Yeah, you're gonna take you just make your family's plot that much bigger.
Exactly.
So the family soon built a small, one-room framed cabin, a barn, and a corral, as well as going so far as to dig a well. Inside the wooden cabin, the area was partitioned with a large canvas, creating living quarters in the back and the small inn and store in the front. A crude sign hung above the front door that advertised groceries to the many travelers that went along the trail. The little store carried few supplies, but they had powder, shot, like bullets, groceries, liquor, tobacco. They would sell meals and occasionally provide a quote-unquote safe overnight resting place for travelers.
Well, it does sound very
Yeah.
attractive as you're passing by. That's enough supplies.
And that's what you would probably see everywhere along a trail like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's good business to be in.
Even if it's shady.
Right. But yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think of it as a traveler. Like if they were selling a saddle, you wouldn't like, oh shit, they have a saddle. I can replace this one kind of thing.
Right.
So keeping mostly to themselves, the Benders appeared to simply be struggling homesteaders who worked hard to earn their living like any other pioneer at the time. Now they emigrated from Germany, and John Bender Sr. was 60 years old when he arrived in the area, and his wife was about 55. John Bender Sr. stood over 6 feet tall and was a giant of a man, and because of his piercing black eyes that were set deeply under huge bushy brows, it earned him the nickname, quote, Old Beetle-Browed John, unquote.
He does sound scary.
That's just horrifying.
Right? I mean, and if you think about it, back in those days, he sounds like something you would see in a horror movie.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
That's the vibes he's giving.
So his ruddy face, mostly covered in a heavy beard, sullen expression, and long hair often led him to be described as a wild and woolly-looking man. John and his raw-boned wife, now this is literally a quote of how someone described this. John and his raw-boned wife spoke with such guttural accents that few could understand what they were saying. I can't even imagine calling a woman raw-boned. Like, what?
What does that mean? Does that mean she's thin?
That must mean her features are really sharp, like her face is so thin.
Oh, maybe.
Because it doesn't make sense otherwise. Because we know what, like, raw dogging is today. So when I first saw
I
raw...
don't think that's what they're talking about.
But when I first saw raw-boned, that's exactly what I thought of.
Oh, no, you know what? Yeah, okay. I didn't think that. You got a fair point there.
That's so funny, though. Raw-boned. Weird. So Mrs. Bender was a heavy-set woman. Oh, so she's not even thin. I'm sorry. I didn't even get to my next point. Was a heavy-set woman and was so unfriendly and had such sinister eyes that the neighbors began to call her a she-devil.
Oh.
Right?
These people have awful vibes, and everyone knows it.
So to add to her fierce looks, Ma Bender claimed to be a medium who could speak to the dead, and she boiled herbs and roots, and she declared that she could use them to cast spells and charms.
Oh, that's fun.
So again, 1870s, probably not the best way to present yourself to your neighbors.
No, that's how you get hung or burned.
However, and the reason I don't think that happened to them is because they're part of this spiritualist group of people that moved to that area.
Yeah, their neighbors are also the same kind of weird.
Yeah, they'd probably all be burned at the stakes for witches if they were in New England.
Truly.
So her husband and son were said to have feared her as she ran that household with an iron fist. John Bender Jr. was a tall, slender man who was about 25, reportedly handsome with auburn hair and a mustache. He spoke better English, but still had a German accent, and he was said to have been social, but was prone to laughing aimlessly, which led many people to think he had a learning disability.
Yeah, that
He's
seems
just a
slightly
chill dude
terrifying.
who's laughing.
Maybe. Their words were half-wit, which I didn't want to have to use, but that's what they called him.
Yeah, that's what they would have said.
Now, their daughter, Kate, was the friendliest of the bunch. She spoke good English with only a slight accent, and she bore cultivated social skills. She was a beautiful girl of 23. She had a quick laugh and enjoyed talking to strangers. She and her brother John often attended Sunday school near Harmony Grove and were readily accepted in the community. Kate was also a self-proclaimed psychic and healer and gave lectures on spiritualism and conducted seances.
Damn, while they're going to Sunday school?
Right.
Wow.
It's definitely a cult area. That's what I mean when you called it. Like, there's something weird happening in this section of Kansas.
Yeah.
Something that wouldn't have happened during any other time period. So Kate also claimed to possess psychic powers, including the ability to communicate with the dead. She soon found the lecture circuit profitable by distributing circulars that proclaimed her skills, including supernatural powers and the ability to cure illnesses and infirmities.
What?
I'm telling you, she was basically claiming that she could heal people.
Dang.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? I just picture those priests that lay hands on people, but it's a 23-year-old beautiful woman doing it in the 1870s.
Much more desirable than the weirdos that do it now.
Except the murder part, yes.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but if you're oblivious to that,
True, which most obviously her victims were.
Yeah.
So the petite auburn-haired woman desired notoriety and often advocated for free love and justified murder in her lectures.
Dang.
Right?
Wow.
So
Holy crap.
along with her desire for fame, she also craved wealth and position. And though her beauty and social skills gained popularity with the locals, outside of the area, she started to be accused of satanic rituals.
Saw that
Oh,
one
yeah,
coming.
that makes sense.
And this is literally, this next part is quotes of people at the time, their contemporaries and their neighbors, had to say about the Benders, which gives us an interesting, if not skewed, look into this family. So the old man was repulsive, hideous, and a brute without a redeeming trait. He was dirty, profane, and ill-tempered. Old Mrs. Bender was a dirty old Dutch crone. Her face was a fit picture of a midnight hag that wove the spell murderous ambition about the soul of Macbeth. First off,
Damn, this is poetic as fuck.
right? I want to know who wrote this, right?
Yeah, the local poets are going off.
Young Bender, seen when excited, recalled the grave-robbing hyena at once to mind.
These reads. Oh, it's so good.
What?
That's why I didn't want to change a single word. It's too
No,
good.
this is good.
And they saved the longest description for Kate. Kate proclaimed herself responsible to no one save herself. She professed to be a medium of spiritualism and delivered lectures on that subject. In her lectures, she publicly declared that murder might be a dictation for good, that in what the world might deem villainy, her soul might read as bravery, nobility, and humanity. She advocated free love and denounced all social regulations for the promotion of purity and the prevention of carnality, which
Work, queen.
right? Which she called miserable requirements of self-constituted society.
Okay, she was right about something.
She was. And you're 100%. She was way ahead of her time. And then they continue. She maintained carnal relations with her brother and boldly boldly proclaimed her right to do so in the following words found in her lecture manuscript, which was an additional quote inside a quote. Shall we confine ourselves to a single love and deny our natures their proper sway? Even though it be a brother's passion for his own sister, I say it should not be smothered. Unquote.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
I
you definitely deny that. You smother that and you kill it.
Yes. You need to stop that one. Yes.
Yeah, let's not that.
I know I'm going to cover this later, but there's speculation that they weren't actually brother and sister. That they themselves might have been a married couple, but for whatever reason they claimed to be brother and sister and the children of the older couple.
Interesting. I mean, they don't. The way it sounds, it doesn't sound like they have any physical resemblance to their parents.
Right, it does not.
He's like a really skinny guy.
Well, I'm going to post photos on Instagram like I always do each week. So there are sketches of them, but there's also a photo that someone claims is them, but I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a real photo. So I'm going to post it, but I'm having that disclaimer there as well. So it's really tough to say, only because photos that old are hard to pinpoint exactly.
That's true.
So when the Benders opened their store and inn in 1871, many travelers would stop for meal or supplies. However, some of those men who frequently carried large sums of cash intending to settle or buy stock or purchase a claim began to go missing. The Bender family sold stolen goods such as horses, saddles, clothes, and other possessions under the guise that people who had spent the night had been unable to pay, so they had been basically paid by trading goods.
Interesting.
So it's a good kind of loophole because you can say, well, yeah, I don't know where they went, but they didn't have any money to give me, so they gave me these possessions that you're recognizing.
Right. That makes sense.
It's an interesting little alibi, especially because if they're missing, they can't counteract what you're saying.
Right, and people go missing on this trail all the time. They're dying of dysentery.
Right, exactly. And, well, I mean, if they're dying of dysentery, you'll find them on the side of the road. You know what I mean?
But these people they're not runaways?
This is before the modern-day police bias.
Wow, vibes.
That's really funny. So in May of 1871, the body of a man named Jones was discovered in Drum Creek with a cut throat and a crushed skull.
Uh-oh.
The owner of the Drum Creek claim was suspected, but no action was taken against him. In February of 1872, the bodies of 2 men were found with the same injuries as Jones. Now, the area was already widely known for horse thieves and villains, and a vigilance committee often arrested some for those disappearances, but only to be later released. Now, a vigilant committee is basically just a gang of vigilantes, something that would probably be akin to the KKK in later years. So many innocent men were under suspicion and were run out of the county by these committees. So when family and friends began to look for their missing loved ones, they could trace them as far as Big Hill County in southeast Kansas before finding no traces of the lost travelers. So these first few missing travelers did not raise an overall alarm in the area, as it was not uncommon for men to continue their journey westward during those days. However, to save a little bit of time, because I'm not going to go through each one of these individually, I'm going to give you a list of those that were reported to have gone missing or have been found dead in December of 1872. This is all within 1 month.
Damn.
There was Ben Brown, Henry Mackenzie, Johnny Boyle, George Newton Longcore, and his 18-month-old daughter, Marianne.
Oh.
John Greery, Red Smith, Abigail Roberts, and being found were various body parts. The parts did not belong to any of the other missing victims and are believed to have belonged to at least 3 additional victims.
Holy shit.
There were also 4...
That's a lot.
We're not even done.
Oh my God.
There were also 4 unidentified males found in Drum Creek and the surrounding areas. All four had crushed skulls and cut throats. One may have been a man by the name of Jack Bogart, whose horse had been purchased from a friend of the Benders after he went missing in 1872. And lastly, was in May of 1873, there was a Dr. William York who went missing. That's a lot in such a short period of time.
Seriously.
This is basically probably America's first serial killing family.
Yeah, this is just so many. So fast. It's like every night they're doing it.
Right, but just imagine now all the people that must be traveling westward knocking at your door.
Right.
So those opportunities kept presenting themselves.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. So by the spring of 1873, the region had become strife with rumors, and travelers began to avoid the trail in that area. When neighboring communities started to make slanderous insinuations, the Osage Township called a meeting, which they held at a schoolhouse that March, to see what, if anything, could be done. About 75 people attended the gathering, including both of the Bender men. The discussion began regarding the 10 people who were reported missing, including the latest victim, the well-known Independence physician named Dr. William York. With the full realization that there was a major problem in their township, the group collectively decided to search every farmstead between Big Hill Creek and Drum Creek.
Dang.
The Benders were the only ones that remained silent, while most of the attendees volunteered to have their properties searched. So you can imagine what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, not gonna go well.
Well, sometime later, a man by the name of Billy Toll, a neighbor of the Benders, noticed that the Bender Inn was abandoned and all their animals were unfed.
They're making a run for it.
So Toll reported the news to Leroy F. Dick, the township trustee.
Sorry.
I know, it's hard. It doesn't help that his middle initial was F.
Yeah, F Dick. That's good for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. So a search party was soon formed, and that included Dr. York's brother, a colonel from Fort Scott. So when the men arrived at the property, they found the cabin empty of food, clothing, and personal possessions. A terrible smell inside the abandoned inn also greeted them.
Ew, gross.
They found the trap door nailed shut in the middle of the floor. They pried it open and found a 6-foot hole filled with clotted blood, which was creating that terrible odor. Exactly.
Ew.
However, there were no bodies in that hole. Just blood. Yeah.
Ooh.
That's enough.
So finally, the men physically moved the entire cabin to one side. So this is back in the day when they weren't like on an actual foundation.
Right, they just like moved the whole thing.
Yeah, they just fucking got a party together and lifted and moved the house, which is crazy.
That is wild.
And even though that they did that, they kept searching, but no bodies were found there either. So they, continued to dig and search around the cabin, and that's when they settled on the area basically utilized as a vegetable garden and an orchard.
Oh no.
And they found an area of freshly stirred, like a depression in the earth. And they found their first body, which was buried head down with its feet up, scarcely covered by dirt.
That's fucking weird.
What a weird way to dispose of a body.
Yeah, I don't know why. That's like kind of upsetting, and I don't know why, but it's like just really weird.
Like he just dug straight down.
Like think of how hard it would be to
to dig that hole.
But even to place it in there that way and like plant it, like if you've ever tried to plant a plant with long roots,
right? But
you kind of have to like.
Well, I'm imagining
set it up,
right? But I'm imagining a very narrow hole.
Yeah, that's fair. That's kind of hard to dig.
That's what I'm saying.
I have so many questions.
And unfortunately, we're not going to get an answer to that question.
No, we'll never know.
It's so weird, though. So the corpse that they found was that of Dr. William H. York, and his skull had been bludgeoned and his throat had been cut from ear to ear. The digging continued the next day, and 9 other bodies and numerous dismembered body parts were found, including a woman and a little girl.
Oh.
The burial site was christened. I love that they used the word christened in this thing I found. The burial site was christened Hell's Half Acre. And another brother of Dr. York, a lawyer and state senator residing in Independence, offered a reward of $1,000 for information leading to the Bender family arrest. Now, $1,000 back then is worth roughly
a shitload of money.
$24,000 today.
Damn.
Crud.
Which is a crazy amount of inflation.
Yeah, it is.
So on May 17th of that year, Governor Thomas Osborne added to that amount by offering a $2,000 award. So now it's up to $50,000. So word of the gruesome murders spread fast, and thousands of people flocked to that site, including news reporters from as far away as New York and Chicago. The Bender cabin was ripped apart by gruesome souvenir hunters, right down to the bloody bricks that lined the cellar.
Ew.
Now, I'm all for, there's a part of me that has this dark side, and I kind of enjoy little weird souvenirs, but what the fuck?
Yeah. Ew.
Yeah, like
that just proves that people will take anything, and
right.
There's levels of greed no matter what happens.
But if you came over to my place and I was like, see this piece of board, this little 2-inch by 3-inch piece of board, That came from a house where someone killed somebody. You'd be like, who
Right.
gives a shit?
Right. I guess like it could go in a museum and that would be kind of cool to like have that, but like what?
Yeah, it doesn't make
Weird.
sense. It'd be
It's
one.
weird.
The bloody bricks in a weird way make sense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
like
I guess so.
just a piece of the roof, like what does that do? It just doesn't
Right. I
make
guess they're just
sense.
taking whatever's there and thinking,
Yeah,
if I sell half of that, it's good.
right. And going back to the Dahmer case we covered, that's why it was so good when that one person bought all of Dahmer's property and destroyed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So bit by bit, the story of the Benders was pieced together, and the Benders were not what they appeared. They weren't even a true.
Don't say.
They weren't even a true family, as some speculate that the only ones that were related were Ma and Kate Bender.
Oh.
Oh wow. Okay.
So their downfall was the murder of a father and daughter named Launcher and Dr. William York, who had people who came looking for them. So in the winter of 1872, Mr. Launcher and his daughter had left Independence for Iowa but were never heard from again. And in the spring of 1873, Dr. York took it upon himself to look for them, stopping at homesteads along the trail to ask questions. Though he had reached Fort Scott unscathed, it was his start to return on March 8th where he never got home.
Mm.
So Dr. York had two brothers, as we've essentially established, one living in Fort Scott and the other living in Independence. So we have these two very reliable sources that basically say he was here, now he's not.
Right.
So both knew of his travel plans, and when he failed to return home, an all-out search began looking for him. Colonel York, leading a contingency of 50 men, began questioning every traveler along the trail, stopping at an area of homesteads, one of them being the Bender Inn. Now, the Benders had tried to help by admitting that Dr. York had stopped at their place, but convinced the search party that he had left and was probably waylaid by Native Americans.
Wow, that's fucked up.
Right? Even with her clairvoyant abilities, Kate attempted to search for the missing doctor to throw any suspicion off herself and her family, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So after Colonel York's visit and the meeting at Harmony Grove, the Bender family had fled. Only a few days later, the homestead was found abandoned, and we've kind of covered this. And that's when they would continue to find the largest, at the time, the largest mass murder burial ground site, as body after body was uncovered. So 10 bodies were found in the Bender's apple orchard, and that included Dr. York and Mr. Longcare and his daughter, who was just 8 years old.
Ugh, that's so sad.
So more gruesomely, though the little girl's body was found to have multiple injuries, none of them were her cause of death.
Oh,
What?
no.
It was speculated that the poor girl had been buried alive.
No. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so awful.
So of the discovery of her remains, the Kansas City Times reported, quote, "The little girl was probably 8 years of age and had long sunny hair and some traces of beauty on a countenance that was not yet entirely disfigured by decay. One arm was broken, her breastbone had been driven in. The right knee had been wrenched from its socket, and the leg doubled up on the body."
Oh.
Awful.
It's one thing to do that to an adult murder victim, I guess, but this little girl couldn't defend herself, and that's
Not at all.
And I wonder how much of the injuries were caused by them trying to stuff her into a fucking hole.
Right. Oh, that's so sad.
So other bodies found in the garden were those of Henry Mackenzie's mutilated remains, 3 men named Ben Brown, W.F. McCrotty, and Jean Geary, as well as an unidentified male and female. Johnny Boyle's body was found in the well. Dismembered parts of several other victims were also discovered but never identified. 4 other bodies with crushed skulls and slit throats were found just outside the property. So for all this death, the Benders gained only about $4,600, 2 teams of horses and wagons, a pony, and a saddle.
That's it?
That's it. Now keep in mind, $4,000 back then is like $100,000 today. But
Right. That's a lot of money, but it's also
All
like,
right,
yeah,
yeah.
still not much
The
for how many
money.
people they killed. And it's like, it makes sense because they're preying on people who like need a place to stay.
right, and then people, and back then you couldn't. It's not like anyone could really track you. Although, again, if it wasn't for that one doctor, they might have gotten away with this. Because that one doctor had two brothers that knew where he should be. So it's amazing how they got discovered. So, because the travelers carried nothing else of value, it is widely speculated that the Benders killed simply for the bloody thrill of it. It can't.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it.
A Kansas newspaper reported that the crowd was so incensed after finding the bodies that a friend of the Benders named Brockman, who was among the onlookers, was taken and hanged from a beam in the inn
Holy shit.
Oh, God.
until he was unconscious. Then they revived him, interrogated him, and hung him again.
Ah.
Oh, what?
After a third hanging,
Third?
they released him, and he staggered home, quote, as one who was drunken or deranged, unquote.
All right, wait. He was still alive?
Yes, they let him live.
That's twisted as hell.
They literally did that as an interrogation method.
My
Mobs are fucking
God.
crazy.
He's lucky to have been alive, let's be honest. Although, I don't
Yeah.
know, like maybe you'd want to die after being hung 3 fucking times.
Yeah, for real.
So several weeks after the discovery of the bodies, Addison Roach and his son-in-law William Buxton were arrested as accessories. In total, 12 men of bad repute in general were arrested, including Brockman, the guy they hung 3 times.
Interesting.
Brockman would be arrested again 23 years later for the rape and murder of his own 18-year-old daughter.
Oh,
What the
that's
fuck?
so disgusting.
Right. So he should have been left to fucking die.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not okay.
As word of the gruesome murders spread, more and more travelers came forward to tell their own stories of their narrow escapes from the family. So one of those people was a man named William Pickering. When he refused to sit with his back to the canvas because of the disgusting stains on it, Pickering said that Kate Bender threatened him with a knife, so he fled the home.
Oh, God, there's stains on this. Oh,
Right? You'd think you'd
dude.
clean it, right? A Catholic priest said that he fled when he saw one of the Bender men concealing a large hammer. Basically, now the search party is looking for them. A search party is formed, and they're looking for the Benders. And after following a fresh trail of wagon tracks, the search party found that the Benders had gone to a nearby town of Thayer, some 12 miles north. There, the family purchased tickets to Humboldt on the northbound Leavenworth, Lawrence, and Galveston train. Several days later, the Benders' team and wagon were found, like team of horses, and wagon were found a short distance away, but the horses were half starved. Upon further investigation, Captain James B. Ransom, the train's conductor, said that John Jr. and Kate disembarked at Chanute and took the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad train south to Red River near Denison, Texas, which is where the terminus of that railroad ended. Allegedly, the pair then fled to a tough outlaw colony along the border of Texas and New Mexico. And meanwhile, Ma and Pa Bender continued on the train north to Kansas City, where it's believed they then transferred to a train headed to St. Louis. So they split up.
Yeah, they're just trying to get away from
Everybody.
it. And
Yep. Which is crazy because, see, this is where the theory that maybe only Ma and Kate Bender were related is called into question. Because,
right, like they wouldn't have split up like that.
right, they would have split up in 2 different groups, or maybe the men going in 2 different directions. But so that's why I don't know that I buy that. Attempts to capture this bloodthirsty family were immediately made by both law official officers and vigilantes alike. Although no one ever collected the rewards offered, rumors of several parties who had captured and killed the Benders began to fly. One vigilante group claimed to have shot down the men and Ma Bender and burned Kate alive as a witch.
Oh, Jesus.
Damn.
Another group claimed to have caught the Benders while escaping to the south and lynched them before throwing their bodies into a river. Convenient, right? No bodies.
Yeah, a lot of people make these claims. It makes sense.
Yet another group claimed to have killed the Benders during a gunfight and buried their bodies out on a prairie somewhere. Which, why would you bother to even bury the bodies?
Right. You would just leave them there to rot.
However, none of these tales were confirmed, nor were the bodies found, so most thought the Benders had managed to escape. For the record, spoiler alert, they're never caught.
Really?
Damn.
Yeah, they get away.
Holy crap.
So in 1884, an elderly man matching John Bender Sr.'s description was arrested in Montana for a murder committed in Salmon, Idaho, where the victim had been killed with a hammer blow to the head. A message requesting positive identification was sent to Cherryvale, but the suspect severed his own foot to escape his leg irons and bled
Holy
to
fuck.
death. And he bled to death.
Oh my God.
Holy fuck.
We're in a Saw movie now?
Right? That's what I'm saying. Like, what the fuck? It's crazy. And that sounds like it might have been him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
So by the time a deputy from Cherryvale arrived, identification was impossible due to decomposition.
Ew, God.
Damn.
Well, they can't keep the body on ice. There is no refrigeration.
This is true.
So and that's a long trip from Kansas up to somewhere in Idaho in wagon. You know what I mean? So yeah, I can kind of see it, which again sucks, but it does sound like this guy might have been Pa Bender.
Yeah, could have been. I guess we just don't really know.
And sadly, we never will. So despite the lack of identification, the man's skull was displayed as that of Pa Bender in the Salmon Saloon until Prohibition forced its closure in 1920 and the skull disappeared.
Dang.
How fucked up is that? You go into
That's
a bar
insane.
and there's a human skull on display? That's so fucked up.
That is wild.
And it's not like today where you'd be like, oh, it's a Halloween decoration. No, it's a real fucking skull.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I bet this. I mean, I've seen like some shit like the Paris catacombs where they used to just see a whole bunch of human bones, but
Right, but that was created for a different purpose, and I wouldn't disturb it today, you know, but
yes, no, I'm just saying it is weird. It is weird to see human remains like that.
Yeah, just on display at a bar. I would walk back out of that bar.
Yeah, I don't really want to hang out there for sure.
So for years, sightings of Ma Bender and Kate were reported, and in 1889, 2 women were extradited from Michigan on the charge.
Oh, interesting.
The pair were jailed, but the case was dropped for lack of evidence. Now, of the family, Pa Bender was supposedly found to have been a man named John Flickinger from Holland or Germany. So it's believed that's where he emigrated from.
Interesting.
Though he allegedly committed suicide in that 1884 event in Idaho, others believe that Ma and Kate may have murdered him as they fled Cherryvale with all the cash and valuables, which is hysterical.
Yeah.
Now, Ma Bender was born Elmira Meek, M-E-I-K, Meek, I guess. She was from the Adirondacks. She was married as a teenager to a man named George Griffith. After bearing him a dozen children, including Kate, Mr. Griffin suddenly died.
Huh, I'm sure he did.
Right? And during his autopsy or examination, because it's the 1800s, some said that according to the report, he had a bad place on his head that resembled a dent that now people are speculating might have been a hammer.
Yup.
Yeah.
After which she reportedly remarried several times, killing those husbands and 3 of her other children so that they couldn't testify against her. Now, again, we don't know how true any of this is.
Right.
So John,
Wow.
Yeah, right? So John Jr. was allegedly a man named John Gebhardt. His habit of laughing aimlessly led him to being described as a half-wit, as we said, though many afterwards believed that that was a ruse to disguise just how intelligent he was. Though most were led to believe that John and Kate were sister and brother. Occasionally, people suspected them as being man and wife, which we've said. The two were known to have had a relationship, and further tales abounded that when Kate became pregnant, she would bash in the baby's head once it was born. Again, I have a hard time believing that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's especially if
it's
she's
all very speculative.
Yeah, that's what you would want to say about a terrible family. So after the Benders' escape, one detective who had closely followed all leads said that he had traced Gebhardt, John Jr., to the outlaw county along the Texas-New Mexico border where he had found the criminal had died of apoplexy.
What's that?
You know what? I don't know. Let's look that up.
Refers to the rupture of internal organs and the associated symptoms.
Okay.
Interesting.
So
also refer to the loss of blood flow to an organ or bleeding into an organ.
So that's apparently how he died in this border town. So according to this, Kate was the fifth child of Ma Bender and had been born Eliza Griffith. Eventually, she married and went by the name of Sarah Eliza Davis, and allegedly was working at the Bender Inn, and she earned her keep as a prostitute, adding any additional amount to the traveler's bill for the privilege of laying with her.
Damn.
If it's true, it's really fucked up. If it's not true, these people have one hell of an imagination. But like you said, like fucking Shakespeare is writing their fucking story, you know?
Yeah.
So crazy. So in the end, it was Kate who was primarily blamed for the numerous bloody murders. And even at her young age, she was the inspiration for the crimes. Like, she was the one who came up with them, which is crazy. And maybe she was, because she was so far ahead of her time with everything else. Though the tales of what happened to the Benders can only be speculated as to their accuracy, the fact that 10 bodies were found on the property is not in dispute. However, other corpses found in the area and many mysterious disappearances of other lonely travelers led the locals to believe that the Benders may have killed more than 20 people.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
I'm sure they killed a lot more. So if the terrible story of the Benders' murders were not legend enough, another tale began circulating regarding the property upon which the Benders had once lived. The old Bender property apparently is haunted. A decade after the gruesome killings, nothing was left of the cabin and the outbuildings of the property. The only thing remaining was an empty hole that had once been a cellar. From these depths, allegedly came the souls of those murdered on the site, wandering about the property, making moaning sounds that passerbys could hear. Those most often reporting glowing apparitions on the property were those who had come to the site in search of some long-lost souvenir from the murders. So quickly, scavengers were frightened away by the dead souls to spread their ghastly tales.
Ooh.
Which is so stupid, really.
Yeah.
So provocative was the Bender family tale that the Bender Museum was created in Cherryvale in 1961.
Yeah, I bet that's a wild museum.
You gotta be real notorious to have a museum.
Or nothing else ever happened in your area.
Two things can be true.
Right. In honor of the Kansas statewide centennial celebration, an exact replica of the Bender cabin that housed antiques and household items was built. Its first 3 days of opening attracted more than 2,000 visitors.
Holy hell.
In 1967, 3 of the Bender hammers were gifted to the museum by the Dick family. The museum remained a popular tourist destination until it closed in 1978 when a fire station was built there. So we can't go there today. Not that I think I'd want to.
Yeah, somehow I'll live without it.
And a lot of people wanted to relocate the building, but it became kind of an argument in the town, with locals objecting to the town only being known for the Bender atrocities. So,
right.
Which makes sense.
Did they find something better to be known for?
Not yet, at least. In addition to the museum, Southeast Kansas may be the only place where a state historical marker celebrates a mass murder, because they have a big sign now, and I have a photo of that discusses it basically right on the spot. So that's kind of weird.
Damn.
Yeah. So in 2020, the land that the Bender home was on was purchased by a man named Bob Miller of Independence, Kansas, who announced he would attempt to unravel some of the mysteries surrounding the Benders. Plans are in the works to pinpoint the location of the home on the property with an archaeological dig that started in May of 2024.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, recent. Miller said in an interview, this is a 3-year process. He also claimed that he learned something else of interest. The Bender family also has a very, very loose tie to that of the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama.
What?
What?
Yep. Hold on, we're going to get to it. And as I said, very, very loose, and I'm talking like 6 degrees of separation kind of shit.
Oh, okay, so we're talking Kevin Bacon.
Exactly. We're not talking connection. We're not talking relations. Yeah. So the story begins that a man named David Dunham, who, along with his wife and 7 children, were moving to the area from Indiana to purchase property for a new home. They had a lot of money on them, and they stopped at the Benders to spend the night. Miller says that an illness in the family may have ended up saving their lives. Basically, one of the little boys had a cold, and the mother was up all night with the sick boy taking care of him. She noticed some blood stains on the trapdoor of the floor and a light on in the cellar and became suspicious. Miller says the family were able to leave the Bender home unharmed, perhaps because, she was up all night with her sick son, and that's where he found the connection to President Obama. David Dunham had a brother named Jacob Dunham, and Jacob came down from Indiana and settled in Labette County on his way to Oklahoma, where he died in 1907. Several generations down from Jacob was Stanley Dunham, who was born in 1942 in Wichita. Stanley Dunham was President Obama's mother.
Stanley?
Yeah, Stanley.
I've never heard that as a woman's name.
I have never heard that as a woman's name until now myself.
Wow.
Yep.
That's wild. That is an extremely loose tie, but still kind of wild and random.
Learn something new every day.
Right, and I couldn't leave it out. I had to include it. So that's it. That's the whole Bender story. They're still out on the loose, although they're obviously dead by now.
What is it with these cases
wild.
where the people aren't who they thought they were as far as relations? Because we've had at least 1 or 2 cases where that's happened.
Are you talking back in the day like that?
Just in no, like cases that we cover.
I don't know.
Like, this is the.
I see what you mean. No, at the very least, yeah. There's the one with the little girl who was taken by a guy who claimed she was his daughter, and then she was his wife. Yeah. It's because they add really great twists to stories that we think we know or how they're going to play out. So I find myself drawn to those type of cases.
No, it's quite intriguing. I think it's very interesting that it's not a one-off, and it seems to happen more in stuff that we run into.
Right. Again, I'm drawn to cases like that, so that's why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. I just love this case because it's so far back that it has that like kind of cool historic feel, but it's fucked up. Like
deeply.
It shows that modern day serial killers aren't the only serial killers out there. Like.
Yeah.
Like a whole fucking family of it. How is that
different eras of it too? Like it looks very differently.
Yeah, it's so crazy. But again, like the opportunity of that. Like if you dropped Ted Bundy back then in the Oregon Trail, oh my god.
Oh my god, that would be entertaining as hell.
You just said entertaining.
Well, to see how he would fare.
No, I understand what you meant, but wow.
Wrong choice of word, but
no, I understand. It's pretty funny though.
Yeah.
Like you're like sitting there with your popcorn. Oh,
kinda.
Man. All right. So that's it for this week. Thank you everybody for joining us. Once again, I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And we'll see you next week for our 100th episode.
Yeah, 100.
Hell yeah.
Right,
Bye.